You've probably been doing goals all wrong, especially if you have resistance to setting goals, New Year's resolutions, however you think about it. Today in this session, we are breaking down goals. We're giving you a framework for building better habits around goals and achieving more in your next year. I'm so pumped for this material. Let's get into it. This is, of course, the Meaning Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Cumberland. This show is all about helping entrepreneurs build lives and businesses that we can love for the long haul, not just sacrificing ourselves to a everyday, day in, day out hustle culture that we don't love in order to get to a future that may never come. Instead, creating that alignment, finding that balance between who we are and what we do, and building a business that we can love for the long haul. If that sounds like you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into goals. Let me give you the roadmap of everything that we have and I have in store for you. I'm so pumped about this material. This stuff gets me fired up. Let me give you the roadmap of where we are going here today. First, we're going to dig into the mindset of goals. This is the biggest mistake that I see people make, is not thinking about goals, the goals that they're setting, the goals that we're chasing in the right way. So we're going to start there. Then we're going to go through a bunch of points about goals. We're going to talk about how to choose the right goal for you, how to choose the right level of goals so you're not overreaching, how to choose the right type of goals. There's multiple types of goals, how to create an action plan for your achieving your goals, because you can't achieve your goals without an action plan. And then finally, creating a system for goals and how to manage your goals, which will then create the right environment for you to achieve more in your next effort here. So if that sounds fun to you, stay tuned. This is going to be fun. First, let's talk about goal mindset. First thing that you need to know about goals is that goals are like muscles. Setting goals, achieving goals, chasing goals, it's like muscles. The first time you do it, it might feel a little bit awkward, but the more you do it, you start building those reps, you start building that muscle, and it gets more comfortable. Just like the first time you go to the gym, you don't bench press a whole bunch of weight. You start with just the bar, and that feels really heavy, and then it gets light over time, and then you're able to add weight and achieve more with those muscles. Goals are the same way. So understand that the first time you do this, it might not feel comfortable, but you get better at it. And the better you get at it, you understand what works for you. You understand how to better set goals and how to better pursue those goals. Second mindset piece that we need to understand, that goals serve as directions just as much as they serve as destinations. This is a huge mistake that I see people make. They set this destination and they say, I'm going to get there. And if I don't get there, then I've failed. But the truth and the real power of goals is that the goals that you set, sure, it's a great destination. We want to get there. But in the pursuit of that destination, we take that direction, we follow that direction, and that takes us somewhere. The saying says, shoot for the stars and you might make it to the moon, which I think captures this well. If you don't chase after something big, you don't make progress. So goals, and this is a big reframe, it's not just about achieving the goal, but about the momentum that you get, the progress that you make in pursuit of that goal. Thirdly, goals without systems just get abandoned. You have to have a system to bolster up, to support the goal. You can't just set a goal and forget about it and then come back a year later and be like, oh, that goal I didn't achieve. Of course you didn't achieve it because you didn't have a system for achieving the goal. So we're going to talk about creating those systems. Fourthly, in order to do goals well, you have to have a bias for action. The best goals are the goals that are going to get you moving forward, moving in a new direction, moving at a different pace, those kinds of things. And then finally, goals should be thought of as iterative. What does that mean? That means that you are constantly iterating on them. You set it, you chase it, then you revisit in your current context, looking back at where you've been over the interim time, and then recommitting to that goal. If that's a goal that you want to keep pursuing, you keep moving that line, that finish line further ahead, maybe pivoting it one way or the other in order to make sure that you keep moving in the direction. That iterative process is so essential to this. So those are the mindset pieces. Goals are like muscles. Goals serve as directions just as much as destinations. Thirdly, goals without systems get abandoned. Fourthly, you have to have a bias for action with your goals. And then finally, goals should be iterative. The best goals are iterative. So let's get into choosing goals, choosing the right level of goals, the types of goals, systems, and all of that. Let's talk about choosing the right goal for you. What goal is right for you at this time? That's not a question that I can answer. It's a question that only you can answer. If you go back in the feed to our last episode, I gave you my process for doing an annual review. That's a really essential step that can be really helpful for thinking about this question, because it gives a good context to this conversation. I'm a firm believer that you can't know where you're going unless you know where you have been. And so before you start thinking deeply about the goals that you want to set and what you want to achieve, you need to spend some time thinking about where have you been, what has brought you this far, so that you can put these goals in the context of that life. Some questions that can help if you're stumped and you need help thinking about what kind of goals are best for you are questions like, who do you want to become? And that's for identity-based goals. Identity, you might want to, maybe this is the year where you become an entrepreneur, or where you become a better leader, or a better, wife, husband, friend, brother, sister, father, mother, daughter, whatever might be. Secondly, so first, who do you want to become? Secondly, what do you want? What is it that you want to achieve? What is it that you want to have? And why do you want it? Why is that important to you? And then finally, the third question. So who do you want to become? What do you want? And then thirdly, what needs to change? Again, looking back at your life, looking back at your last year in particular, what isn't going well that you need to change? If you did the exercise, the health areas of life health exercise that I invited you to do in the annual review process last episode, then you'll know there's some gaps that you might want to address, some things that you might want to course correct on. So what do you want to change? Answer those questions. That'll give you a good direction to start thinking about the goals that you're setting and what goals to choose. Next in our process, we want to think about what is the right level of goals. It's really easy to set a goal that's so unrealistic that it doesn't have any real meaning for you. And it's also really easy to be on the other end of the spectrum, where a goal that you set is so simple that it's not meaningful because it's not challenging enough. It's helpful to think about that spectrum and this pendulum, how the pendulum can swing along that spectrum. Your comfort zone is right here on one end, and then overreaching is at the other end. You want your goals to be somewhere in the middle, not too far towards overreaching where it's not even realistic, not too close to your comfort zone where it's not even challenging. The studies show that you get further, and this is super essential, you get further by chasing after goals that are further reach, that are further out, that are harder for you, further outside your comfort zone. That will take you further by then setting goals that are super realistic, goals that you feel very confident in. So I want to challenge you to step outside your comfort zone, set a goal that will push you, that you'll have to change how you are in the world, the things that you're doing in the world, who you are in the world in order to achieve that goal. Set that goal outside your comfort zone to get you moving. We'll get right back to our conversation, but I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. This episode in this season of the podcast is brought to you by 923.co, a web and mobile app development team that I have been working directly with for more than a year, building VideoSnap. VideoSnap.io, if you don't know, is the software that I built to repurpose long-form speech-based content, like this podcast, into short-form, viral-ready videos. Think TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Reels, etc. If you're making content and you want to be found in the algorithms, you should be using VideoSnap. I've been building directly with 923, and they are a phenomenal team with a strong track record of building high-quality apps. They've built more than 50 apps. Those apps have gone on to do more than $1 billion for their clients, which is incredible. I'm also now contributing to their team in a product strategy role, which means if you have a dream that you want to realize with software, not only should you talk to 923 because they are so good at software, but I could help you directly build that with them. Go to 923.co, all spelled out, 9networthree.co, and find out more. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. We've talked about the goal mindset. We've talked about choosing what goals are right for you, thinking about these questions. Who do you want to become? What do you want? And what needs to change? Next, we talked about choosing the right level, right outside your comfort zone to get you moving so that you'll move further in pursuit of that goal. Next, let's talk about the type of goals. There are a couple different things to keep in mind here. First, let's talk about a framework for measuring goals. GE pioneered this framework called the SMART framework. That's an acronym, SMART. Michael Hyatt adds ER to the end of that, so smarter is the word. That stands for specific, meaning you can say when it's done or not. Measurable, meaning you can measure your progress, measure when it's done. Actionable, it's kind of obvious, like it's something you can take action, that you can move the needle on. Next, you have the R for risky. We've already talked about that and getting you outside your comfort zone. T is for time bound, that time element, saying that I'm going to do this in that amount. I'm going to give you some examples of what this looks like in practice in just a moment, but time bound, having a time constraint. And then the ER that Michael Hyatt adds is exciting and relevant. Exciting and relevant are very important. They come from putting your goal in the context of who you are right now, where you are right now. Again, the annual review can be really helpful with that process. But all this is to say, if you looked at the goals that you maybe were setting years ago and tried to apply them to who you are right now, they would just fall flat. They wouldn't have any meaning. So it has to be relevant, and it has to feel exciting. It has to be something that you want right now, that there has to be a good why behind it, because goals are hard, and that's the nature of it. They're hard, they're exciting, they should be relevant to get you moving and keep you moving. So that's the SMARTer framework. I'm going to give you some examples, help you apply this to whatever it is that you want to pursue, but I'll talk about a couple other really important things. There's both achievement-based goals and habit-based goals. And this is something that people argue about these things. I don't think it's that important to argue about, but let me just give you an example of the two different types. I like habits. Habits are great, but I don't like habit goals as much. A habit goal is something like, I want to run every day this year. That's a great goal. And I did something very similar. But the problem with a habit-based goal, saying I'm committing to a habit, is that it's really easy to fall off the train and feel like you failed, feel like it was, that you wasted all that time. You had this long habit train coming, and then you got sick or whatever, went on vacation, something happened, disrupted your routine, and you fell off the habit, and now your goal is trashed because you've broken the chain, you've lost the habit, etc. I prefer instead to think of an achievement goal. Then you build your habits to support that achievement goal. So for me, when I was just getting into running, I decided I wanted to run 1 mile every day, or the equivalent of 1 mile every day. But I didn't want that to be a habit goal. I wanted to be an achievement-based goal, which just has more flexibility in it. In order for it to be an achievement goal, my goal then was to run 365 miles in a year. For me, starting out running, that's a lot of miles. For me, years later as a established runner, that's not that many miles at all. I do 3+ times that in my typical year of running. But at that time, that was huge. So I could do that by running 1 mile every day, or I could run 2 miles every other day, or 3 miles every 3 days, etc. And that gives more flexibility in order to be able to take some time off. And if I injured myself, or if I got sick, or like I said, was on vacation or traveling, those kinds of things. So I think it's very helpful to think in terms of achievement goals as much as possible, and then use your habits to support those goals. I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm sure there are things that kind of break that mold, and where a habit-based goal is best. But as much as possible, the habits are part of the action plan and the system that supports and bolsters up the goal. The achievement is the goal itself. I want to give you some ideas around what is a good goal that fits into this SMARTer framework that's achievable, not habit-based, as well as some that are not as good. So some examples of good goals would be to run a marathon, to write a book, to buy a rental property, to code an app. Those begin to fit into that SMARTer framework. They really should also have a time-bound nature, that I'm going to run a marathon in 3 months or 6 months, whatever it might be. Write a book in the next year, whatever it might be. Some bad goals that don't work at all with the SMARTer framework are things like run more, become a better writer, become more financially savvy, learn to code. Why? Because they're less specific and they're less measurable. So we need to, as much as possible, tie those desires. Yeah, I want to become more financially savvy. That's a great goal. But how can you put that into a very specific and measurable result? maybe buying a rental property, maybe, investing a certain amount of money, or, whatever it might be. Running more is great, or being healthier, losing weight, all of those are great, but maybe losing a certain amount of weight by a certain time, or running a certain amount of miles by a certain time, or running a certain race at a certain speed or a certain pace. All of those are much more specific, more measurable, which also means it's pushes you more to achieve them, and you know when you've actually achieved them or if you have not achieved them. There could be some exceptions to this, right? Where there's softer skills like being a good leader, or relational things, or spiritual goals, those kind of things that are harder to measure. But as much as possible, you should then break those down into actions that can be measured, even if the specific outcome is softer, fuzzier. What are the actions that accompany that outcome that then could have a achievable result, achievable goal to go along with it? So maybe you want to be a better father, right? Maybe for you to do that, you want to spend X amount of time in the next 3 months on a weekly basis with your kids, intentionally investing in them, right? So it's kind of habit-based, but it's really achievement-based, because you get to the end of those months and you can say, how many hours did I spend one-on-one with my kids? And you can know if you are achieving that. Yeah, maybe that doesn't necessarily one-for-one to equate to you being a better father, but a few goals like that related to your kids will get you much further than saying, I want to be a better father, and then just leaving it at that. All right, we have covered a lot already, and we have a little ways to go still. We've talked about mindset and this idea, iterative, process-centric approach to goal setting. Secondly, we talked about choosing the goals that are right for you and answering those questions of who do I want to become, what do I want, and what needs to change. Next, we talked about choosing the right level of goals, getting in that outside your comfort zone stretch space that's not overreaching, but where it's really asking you, causing you to engage differently in the world, that's going to get you further than a goal that's very much achievable. Next, we talked about the types of goals. We talked about the SMARTER framework, gave some kind of high level, not super specific examples. Again, it's like you could be applying this to so many different things, but gave some examples of those. Talked about achievement versus habit. We talked about good goals and bad goals, examples for that. Now we want to talk about your action plan. The first idea here is that all goals require an action plan. You cannot just set a goal and then expect it to come true without an action plan behind that. So the first idea I want to talk about related to this is that it's so easy for us to get stuck in analysis paralysis, where we say we want to do this or that. We want to research our way through this to find the best path forward, when really the best thing that you can do is start taking action. The best way that I use, the best phrase that I love that just captures this, is this idea of ready, fire, aim. You fire first, and then you aim, you figure it out, you iterate as you go. Similar ideas is that the idea that done is better than perfect. Perfectionism, getting so focused on just doing it perfect, making sure that your path from here to achieving your goal is perfectly straight, perfectly clear cut, is not going to work. What has to happen for most goals, especially the goals that are big and that are big stretch for you, the ones that you don't even know how you're going to achieve, but you want to achieve them, is to just start. And that starting point is to say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to start figuring out how to do it. So just getting that analysis paralysis, that perfectionism out of the way, so that then you can take action. You have to take action. So goals require action. Next, secondly, is the idea that you need to break your goal down. If it's a big goal, break it down into milestones, and each of those milestones into steps. Those steps then into tasks, and then create habits around anything that is repeatable. So the goals break down into milestones, the milestones break down into steps, the steps break down into individual tasks that are achievable in one work session or in one effort, and then create habits that support that effort. Maybe it's the time that you work on your goals, work on those steps, work on those actions. Maybe it's how it fits into the rest of your life. So then 4 more questions to help you create this action plan that you need. So you need to know that it requires action. You need to break it down into steps, into milestones and steps and tasks. And then there's 4 questions that you need to ask. First is, what do you need to learn to achieve this goal? So what's the information that you need to gather, the ideas you need to be able to have access to? Secondly, what do you need access to? What resources, tools, systems, networks, what do you need to have access to in order to accomplish your goal? Third, who do you need in your corner to accomplish your goal? I think who is an essential question. The three categories I want you to think in is accountability, your mentors, and then also gatekeepers or super connectors, the people who can connect you to more people. And then fourthly, your last question here is, what would set you up best for success in this? So with all of this in place, we can then begin to envision our goal set, our goal system. Having a goal system is the most essential step to really keeping goals as a part of your life and using them to help you achieve what you want to achieve. And there's 4 aspects to it, in my opinion, the system that I use. First is this mindset piece, that goals are iterative and changeable. They have to be changing with you as you change, because you are changing. Your goals have to change as you progress. Secondly is to keep your goals close. For me, that means writing them as often as possible, preferably writing them every single day. Thirdly, another piece of that is reviewing your progress monthly or quarterly, or at least annually at the bare minimum. But the more you are checking in on your progress, the more you can assess whether or not the goal is still relevant, whether or not it needs to change in some way, and whether or not you're actually making progress in the way that you need to be making progress in order to achieve that goal. So have those monthly or quarterly check-ins, progress reviews on your goals, on your efforts to see how far you've come. And then finally, along with those, as you review, you also need to reset and ask the question, do these goals still matter as much as they did when I set them? Things happen, life changes, we change, and your goals have to change with you. With all of that in mind, I feel like I've just given you so much information, but I hope that you will take this information and put it into practice. If you would like help with this, I have a goal audit sheet that asks all of these questions, not all of them, but many of these questions for you to fill out as you're thinking about your goals so that you can create your process and make sure that the goals that you're setting are the kind of goals that are most effective for you. You can find that at the Meaning Movement /goals 22. I should make that 23, but it's going to be goals 22, themeaningmovement.com/goals and the number 22. There you'll be able to go through and fill out this worksheet. A couple questions that people often ask me about goals is, first, how many goals should I set? My bias with things like this is as few as possible, but as many as necessary. For me, I want to be able to have just a number of goals that I can actually keep in mind and focus on. Preferably, that's 3. If there's more things in life that I need to be moving the needle on, then I would have maybe 5, maybe 7, but I would also keep them in ranked order so that you know what your top priority is, your one thing that you are chasing, and the others by nature have to fall by the wayside. They're things that maybe you're not working on as aggressively, but they're things that you want to keep in mind. Secondly, people often say, I don't know where to start when it comes with goals. I don't know if goals even work. I want to invite you to just try something. So first, do an annual review. Go back in the feed of this show and you can listen to my annual review process and use the template there. You can also get that template at themeaningmovement.com/review22 and go through and review where you've been. That should highlight some areas where there's gaps in your life between where you are and where you want to be. Set some goals relevant to those gaps to close those gaps and to make progress. So that's another question I often get. Finally, I have a goal, but I don't have what I need to achieve it. What do I do? That is a great question. My assumption then, if you have a goal that you really want to chase after, but you don't have the things that you need, then you need a different goal. Your goal should then be about acquiring the interim step, right? You're reaching too far. You need something that's more attainable, more within your grasp, that still stretches you, but is actually achievable for you, right? I could say, I want to make $1 billion in the next year, but I'm not even making $1 million. It's not really going to be possible, right? So make a goal that you can actually pursue, actually achieve, even though it will take a big stretch for you to get there. That's the most common mistake that I see people make when they say, I don't know how to go about doing this. I don't know how to pursue my goal. It's because that goal is irrelevant for them because of the nature of it. With that, I want to know where this takes you. I want to know what questions you have, what I missed. So shoot me an email, dan@themeaningmovement.com. I'd love to hear what you do with this. I'd love to hear any questions that you have. I hope you use this to make your next year an epic year. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. This is the Meaning Movement Podcast. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. Leave a rating and review if you can. If you're an entrepreneur, you want help course correcting in your entrepreneurial journey, shoot me an email as well. I'd love to share about the accelerator that I'm building and invite you to be a part of it. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week.